Hey everyone, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2017 Ford Explorer, we're going to be showing you how to install the etrailer.com base plate kit. Before we do that though, let's take a moment, check this out, and make sure it's going to work for you. A base plate like this is going to be one of the main parts that you're going to need to flat tow your vehicle down the road behind your motorhome. The other four will be your tow bar, your safety cables, your tow bar wiring, as well as a supplemental braking system. And with the Ford Explorer, I do like to recommend an automatic battery disconnect switch. Just makes the setup time a lot faster whenever you are ready to flat tow. With that said, usually I like to get outside, hook up to the motorhome, and really try to effectively demonstrate how all this stuff is going to work. We have some bad weather today, so not able to do that, so bear with me here. But this is how the front of your Ford can look whenever you're not hooked up to your motorhome. And as far as the appearance goes, I think it's decent, especially compared to a lot of the other base plates out there. They're all fairly similar. I wouldn't say one looks significantly better than the next. So all about the same there. But functionality-wise, I like this setup a lot too. Everything's easy to get to. It gives you a bracket, which makes mounting up your other components like your breakaway switch and your wiring connector much more straightforward. Whenever you are ready to connect to your motorhome, the base plate's going to use these removable arms. And so what you'll do, they do come included with these little caps here that just pop right into the base plate, and I think they look a little bit better as opposed to nothing there and help keep it protected. But you pull those out, and then the arm is going to have these holes in them, and they're going to line up with holes in the base plate. So you just put it in, rotate it about a quarter turn. You'll have a pin and clip you can push through there. That's really all there is to it. Same exact setup on the other side. And as far as compatibility is concerned, what tow bars are going to work with the base plate, the eTrailer tow bars, the Demco tow bars, and I believe there's several other manufacturers that'll pair right up to this as well. But even if not, let's say, for example, Roadmaster, big name, really good tow bars. I know for a fact those aren't going to be directly compatible, right? But let's say if you happen to have a Roadmaster tow bar that you really like and you really want this base plate, you can make that stuff work. Chances are really good that there's an adapter available that you can put on your existing tow bar and allow you to hook these two together. One of the things to pay attention to when picking out a base plate for the Explorer is fitment, right? I know some of them won't be compatible if you have active air shutters, or some won't be compatible with a certain engine or things like that. And to my knowledge, with this base plate, it's going to work with all the different models across the board, whether if you have the air shutters or a particular engine, whatever the case may be. So if you're unsure what you got, this is a pretty safe bet. Chances are really good you'll be able to bolt it up to your Explorer and get the job done. But other than that, when it comes down to it, a pretty straightforward concept here. Gives you that attachment point that you need to hook your tow bar up and get going down the road behind your RV. As far as the installation is concerned, I'd say it probably falls somewhere in the middle when it comes to the difficulty level. I've definitely done some that are easier, done some that are much more difficult. So take your time. I'll show you a couple things along the way that can hopefully speed the process up for you. But if you're not wanting to mess with this, right, you don't have the time, place to work on it, whatever, I definitely understand. You can always use our dealer locator network, and that can hopefully help you find a shop in your neighborhood that can set something like this up for you. But if you're doing it yourself, hang around. We'll go ahead and get started on it now. To begin our installation, we need to get the front fascia removed. So go ahead and pop the hood. And on top here, we're going to have several fasteners that we can remove. We'll have some of these that'll be a 10mm head that kind of just run along the length of the top here. And while we're right here, there's also going to be 2 of these little push pins, one right here and one just like it on the other side. And the way you get these removed, you can just take a flathead screwdriver, pry underneath the head of it, and that'll let you pull the base out. So we'll just continue to work our way down here. Once you have all those fasteners removed, you can take this piece of plastic and set it off to the side for now. Moving underneath the front of our Explorer now, we're going to have 3 screws in the center, and in our case, the plastic's broken around them already, but that's what they'll look like. I'm not even going to bother to take them out because they're broken, you know, but if yours are attaching the fascia to the bottom here, you'll want to get those removed using an 8mm socket. Moving to the side, underneath here, where our wheel aligner kind of comes up and connects, we're going to have 3 8mm head bolts. From this point on, whatever we do to one side over forward, we'll also do to the other side. Set up the same way. Go ahead and get these removed. Moving to your wheel wells now, it helps if you turn your wheels in or out, one way or the other. It gives you more room to work, but along the edge for our wheel well liner, we're going to have a handful of 5.5mm screws. So we'll just work our way up so we get them all removed here. Looks like this will be the last one up here. What I've done now, I just took some painter's tape and put it along the seams where we're going to be working. That way we don't accidentally scratch anything up. But this piece of wheel well trim here, you can just grab it and just work it free up till about here should be fine. At this point, your plastic wheel well liner, you just bend that up out of the way, and it's extremely difficult to actually see in here. Just not a lot of room to get the camera in there, but where your fascia meets your quarter panel, you're going to have 3 10mm head bolts, one about here, here, and here. The head of the bolt will be on the top side, all right? And it's either a 10mm, and I found it almost easiest to use a wrench like this to get in there, but whatever you use, you're going to have to get these removed here. I was able to get those bolts out, and just since we can't really see up there, I figured I'd at least show you what they look like. So that's what you're looking for in there, and they do have Loctite on them. Ours did at least, so they're pretty tight. You stay patient, you'll be able to get them pulled out. On our driver's side here, we'll have this electrical connector, and we're going to disconnect it now. So you can just push down on this tab and pull the 2 ends apart. So what I've done now, I just took a little piece of foam or something to put right here to keep our wheel well, a little trim piece pulled away, and we can start to get our fascia removed. And you're going to want to pull down on it first, and while you're slightly pulling down, if you reach your hand in behind there, there will be a tab that you can push in while you're pulling down, which we'll see in just a second. So that was it there. I was just kind of pushing in on that to release it, and I'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side, get it to that point, and then we can get it completely removed. It may not be a bad idea too if you're by yourself doing this. Before you even do this, if you want to just take a bolt or 2, put it there in the top, hand tight. That way we don't have to worry about the fascia just falling off on us, So now with the next set of hands here, you get both sides of that point, and the fascia more or less just comes right off. That's really all it's holding on. Check for any other electrical connectors. That one that we disconnected was it. And with this removed now, we'll set it off to the side. We are going to need to remove our bumper beam, which is held in place with 4 bolts on each side. But there's also, on this very end here, there's a couple of spot welds. So if we pull the bolts out, we still won't be able to get the bumper removed. So I'm going to drill these spot welds out first before we mess with the bolts. Just have a bit a little bit bigger in the size of them, and we'll run it all the way through. Do that same thing to get these other pinch welds separated. With those pinch welds taken care of, we'll have 4 13mm head bolts. And pull out. What I like to do with the last one in the corner here is take it out and then put a couple threads in hand tight. I got it set up like this on the other side too. And what we should be able to do is just kind of pry on the bumper. To free that little remaining pinch weld there. It's usually pretty common to have to do that. And then we'll pull these out that we left in by hand. Set our bumper off to the side. You can do a little trimming now. In our case, yours might look a little bit different. You might have an active shutter system here, but there's diagrams and instructions that'll tell you where to trim. More or less, any of this plastic stuff that'll be in the way of the base plate needs to come off. So in our case, we just have this little tab like this on each side. That's the only thing that we need to remove. Over here on our passenger side, we're going to have our washer fluid reservoir, and there's 3 bolts or 3 fasteners holding it in. You got one right there. It's an 11mm. We'll remove it. This one, I'm going to loosen up pretty much all the way. Leave a few threads on it. This one I'll pull out completely. That's has an 8mm head. So then you kind of be able to maneuver this and give you extra room for the base plate. And I'm also going to disconnect this electrical because our base plate will kind of fit up in there. So just a tab, you push down, pull that out. We can grab our base plate now and just kind of show you how this is going to work. On each side of it, you're going to have these 2 attachment points, and these are going to sit up on the bottom of the frame rail. This hole here is going to line up with an existing hole in the frame, but this one we're going to have to drill out an opening. So let's check out the frame rail and show you what we're talking about here. Here's the hole that I was talking about on the frame rail. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take the base plate, hold it into position, line up those 2 holes, right? Or that one we talked about with the factory one. Make sure the base plate's all centered and everything. And I'm going to come in with a pair of clamps here, clamp the base plate down, and then use it as a template to find our back hole that we need to drill out. Holding this up, make sure we got everything centered and everything. As best we can. You can always make minor adjustments if you need to once the base plate is clamped in place. Well, we're pretty close. We'll go ahead and lock this down. With it lined up and everything how we want it, I'm going to come in with a marker and using that back hole as a template. So come in and make a mark where we need to drill. And once you get both sides like that, we can unclamp our base plate, get it out of the way. That way we have the space we need to drill those out. Whenever you drill these out, what I like to do is start with the small bit and use that as a pilot, more or less. Make sure that we're all centered up and everything. And then if you got a step bit, I find that these work pretty well. If not, you know, you can always just kind of work up in size to the final diameter. Once I got that hole drilled out, I am going to come back with a paint stick here and just put a little paint on that bare metal to help prevent, you know, future rust or corrosion issues. Once you got both those holes drilled out and everything, take the base plate, clamp it back into position, and then I'm going to start with the smaller bolt. So the attachment point that we just drilled. Take this 1/2-inch bolt and we'll put it in the frame. I can manage to line this up here. Push it down through the bottom. And then you're going to take a flat washer and a split lock washer, put that on the bottom of the bolt, and then just a regular nut here. And all of the hardware that we're going to use to secure the base plate, you want to put on some of that blue Loctite. All right? So, gonna work our way in here. It's a little tight with this clamp, but my thought is if we get this one in first, then we can move the clamp and have more room for the next bolt. So we'll just get this started hand tight. Remove that clamp out of her way. For the next hole, you can take the big bolt, drop that down on through. It'll be the same combination, you'll just have, you know, larger hardware. A flat washer, split lock washer, hex nut with the Loctite on it, and get that started. You can grab your side supports now, and with these two holes in it are going to line up those two holes in the base plate there. And you can take a bolt, put on a split lock washer and a flat washer, your Loctite. Same thing for this one. And on the back side where the bolt comes through, you're simply just going to take a nut and thread it on. We'll come back and snug down the bolts that we put in the frame. So for the large one, you can take a 15/16 wrench, hold the head of it, and on the bottom I also have a 15/16. Snug that up. And then we can change out for a 3/4 inch wrench and socket. Do the same thing for that one closer to the rear of the vehicle. For the bolts here on the side, I have a 9/16 socket and wrench. Go ahead and snug those down too. You want to come back with your torque wrench now and completely tighten down all the hardware to the specifications. We can use our side support now as a template to drill through this piece of sheet metal, kind of just like we did on the bottom of the frame. So I'll run it all the way through, and just be careful if you got a long bit, you know, kind of deep in there, there's hoses and stuff. Just make sure you don't damage anything. that hole drilled, you can take this bolt, has a serrated head on it, and a nylon lock nut, put on your Loctite. We're gonna pass this through. Get it tightened down. We'll come back and completely tighten it with our torque wrench here. Moving over here to the passenger side, our washer tank, I've removed one of the last nuts there. And what you can do is pull that off and then take one of the nuts that they give you and put that over the studs. You got the one stud on the top and then the one down there, and these are just being used as spacers more or less. We'll line this back up. And you know, those two nuts you can put back on from the factory. I just grabbed one of them. I left the other one over on my toolbox there, but I'll do the same thing on that. And then for this one, you can take another nut on the bolt. Get that started. So we'll go to the box, grab the last nut for over here, come back, and we'll tighten everything down. So once that's tight, if you remember, we unplugged this as well. So we'll go ahead and pop that back into position. You can grab your bumper beam now, take the factory hardware, get them all started and tight, and then we'll just get it lined back up and snug it back down. You are going to need to install your safety cables, which I've done. And what I did is I just took the cable, took one end of it, wrapped it around itself through, came up over the frame. And if you look at it from the front here, you know, I just connected everything together using the provided quick links there. And just something that I like to do is take zip ties and kind of zip tie it up. That way it'll stay a lot more secure and not clunk around and everything when we're driving down the road. At this point, it'd be a great time to install some of your other flat towing components. Like your wiring, your braking system, things like that. And that's because with the fascia out of the way, it's a lot easier to route wires and everything else. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And then once we have that wrapped up, we'll come back, revisit this, trim out our fascia if needed, and get everything reinstalled. I was able to get all of our other components installed on the front of our Explorer, and now it's time to get the fascia put back together. So you will need to do some trimming. There is a diagram and instructions. It kind of gives you a rough idea on where you need to cut, so you can use that. But a lot of times everyone's scenario is going to be a little bit different depending on where you mount up some of your other components and everything. So what I did, I just took the fascia, loosely put it in place, put a couple of bolts hand tight up there at the top to keep it from falling off. And I'm just going to kind of cut as we go here. You know, we'll hopefully trim a little bit out and the fascia will continue to fall into place, if you will. So I got a pair of snips. These seem to work pretty well, making clean cuts. Doing it this way too, you kind of remove as little as possible. So kind of just trying to guess on where you're going to need to cut, and then it don't fit right and stuff like that. So I'll continue just kind of trim away here. so we get everything to be able to kind of drop back into place. I was able to get our fascia put back into position just like we talked about. You know, I just continued to cut a little bit as we go, push this in place and cut a little more, work everything out, right? And you'll know when it's right. It kind of goes into position. And you really don't need to get too carried away. I think it turned out pretty good. But once it all snaps back together, you'd simply just reinstall the fascia the opposite way that you removed it. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com baseplate kit on our 2017 Ford Explorer.